All right, now we are recording. And I think maybe Tina, Carmen, maybe we are ready to start, right?
Yes.
All right, all right. So maybe I'll speak first, and I speak first just to say welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our first of our last set of workshops that we are running in the Microservices Azure Service project. This one will be a general overview. Will provide you a general overview of what has been done in our 2-year-long project. We are approaching the end. It will be finishing. Our project will be finishing in February, and so it's time to recap on what has been done in terms of making natural language processing tools available for the community, for the researcher and also professional community. And the idea of today is just to give you a general overview of the work we have done, also how we connect with ELG, and this general workshop will be laying the ground for a number of more localized workshops in different geographies that will go deeper in detail on what has been done for different languages. By the way, my name is Marcos Alvarez. I'm the head of EU programs at Gradient. Gradient is one of the companies that is part of this microservices workshop. And with us, there will be speaking today a number of colleagues. In first place, maybe I invite Tina from Linksoft to introduce herself. She will be speaking later on to provide an overview of the whole project. And also we have Katrine from ELG that will provide next a very brief overview of what ELG is and does, because it provides a very good background for the rest of the workshop today. And also running the workshop, we will have our colleague in Gradient, Carmen. Later on, my colleague Pedro will speak about more technical details on the tools, on how to use those tools that we have made available during the project, etc. So maybe Tina, just I invite you to provide a short welcome to everybody before we pass on to Katrine.
Yes, thank you, Marcos. So yes, my name is Tina Lind-Knutila, and I am the project manager working at Linksoft, and I have been leading this project for almost 2 years now. And I'm very happy that we are at the last leg of the project, and we can today, and then in the local workshops that we introduce later, tell you all of these tools that we've made available, and also of the ELG platform, which, like Marcus said, is a very good grounds for making these tools available. But without further ado, let's move to Katrin and her presentation about the European language grid. Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks, Tina and Marcos. Okay, let me quickly share my screen. I hope you see the right one right now.
Yes, there it is. Thank you.
Visible? Okay, good. Yes, thanks again very much for giving me the opportunity to briefly present European Language Grid here, and for making this this workshop happen. So my name is Katrin Heinecke. I am, or I have to say, I was the project manager of the ELG project, since the project has finished already last summer in the end of June. But as I will now, of course, you know, ELG continues to exist, and I will give you a brief overview of what it does and how it came about. So this is our point of departure. As you know, we have Europe is a multilingual continent, and we have multilingualism, especially in the European Union. This is a very central idea and at the heart of the European idea as such. We have 24 official EU languages with all the same status officially, I have to say, plus dozens of co-official languages, regional minority languages, and other languages of like immigrants and trade partners. And this, of course, as you know, comes with many economic, social, and also technical challenges. Some of these are listed here, so that especially with regard to the digital single market, it needs to be bilingual. The whole communication, be it cross-border, cross-lingual, cross-cultural, has to be managed. And you probably know that the fragmentation of the LT market and landscape is still very high. And this was, as I said, the point of departure a couple of years ago when this topic came up in the European Union and European Commission. And this resulted then in a call that was launched in 2018, the call ICT 29, where the creation of a European language grid was one of the call topics. So and yeah, this consortium that you can see here is the ELG consortium. So the project ELG, European Language Grid, kicked off in in January 2019. So and here we list again the objectives with which we started the project back then. So the main aspect here is and was always to establish ELG as the primary language technology platform and marketplace in Europe to tackle this fragmentation that I just talked about in the whole European LT landscape. We wanted to create a platform for commercial and non-commercial industry-related LTs, be they functional or non-functional. And we wanted to enable the LT community by that to upload services, data sets, and to deploy them and connect and also make use of resources that are available made available by others. This is something that you will look at, I think, later on. And that the idea was to enable businesses to grow and to benefit, and by that, and to unleash this enormous potential that we saw there. Here you see the list of organizations and companies that were part of the consortium. Here's a very early picture before COVID, where we still met for our kickoff. So, yeah. Oops, sorry, that was too quick. Yeah, so what can ELG do, or what is it supposed to do? So first of all, it's a joint technology platform for the whole LT community. That's very important. That's roughly 2,000 organizations. We've made the effort to collect most of them. It's still not complete, and of course these numbers change a little bit. That's why we say 1,750 to 2,000 organizations. ELG is a joint tool and resource sharing platform. So you will see that, and that's, I think, something that really worked out quite well. So when we started out with this idea, we still started almost from, not completely from scratch, but because we could build on further former initiatives, but we built the whole platform new. It's a language data space. I will talk about that in a minute. It's a marketplace, although the whole functionality is not yet in place, but technically it's there, and it can work for the whole LT community. So it's meant to be a place where the whole community of LT developers can meet and showcase their works. It's also sort of a yellow pages. As I said, we list almost 2,000 organizations and companies here, and all this together makes ELG a one-stop shop for European language technologies and language resources. So what do we have at the moment? You can see that also in a minute or later in the second half of the workshop. So we have more than 12,000 resources now listed in ELG, and this is without the listing of the organizations. It's more than 7,000 corpora and data sets. It's almost 2,000 services and tools, and of these are almost 1,200 available directly in ELG, meaning not just linking to them, but they run through ELG. We have 2,800 almost lexical and conceptual resources, almost 500 models, grammars and language descriptions, and as I said, almost 1,800 organizations. So this is really a lot of content. So it's worthwhile having a look to see if you find what you are looking for. So what can you do actually? So ELG is for many groups, user groups. So first of all, the consumers who are just searching and browsing the catalogs, they can find different types of data, language processing services, projects, organizations, via the faceted search. They can also download data if the access conditions and license situation allows. The consumers of services, they can also try out and test language processing services. For this, a prerequisite is to be registered, but that's a quite quick and easy process. So they can call a service from the command line and integrate it, or they can view the code samples, and we have API support for these machine translation, information extraction, automatic speech recognition, text-to-speech, and text classification. Furthermore, there is the opportunity to use the Python-based API for accessing the catalog and searching and fetching directly data sets to feed them into pipelines or workflows. And those who want to provide their own data or their own resources, they can upload these resources into the catalog and register the metadata descriptions with a specific semantic schema that we have developed in this project. And we also have a dashboard for the providers that gives an overview of the own resources and where the provider can see the status, so it's either draft or published. It's quite, yeah, it's I think quite user-friendly and easy to handle. And the providers of language technologies can provide their tools and services via Docker containers. And for that, as I said earlier, there are the options either to have a Docker image in ELG so that the service can be run directly from ELG, or in form of a proxy that talks to the remote service. Here I'm not sure how much time I still have. I just wanted to give you a brief idea of how the numbers of resources developed in time. So this is over the whole runtime of the project. So as you can see, numbers are on the rise. There are some jumps here that are related to special releases. So when releases were launched, then obviously we had rises on different numbers and different stages. Also, when we had events where we could showcase the project and the platform. We have roughly 800 consumers right now. This might sound not so much, but it's quite a lot, or it was by this number by the end of last year. For such a project, this is quite a lot, and many of them are really active and worked quite a lot. So provided data, provided their own services and tools. So of course we are still working to get this number growing, but we were quite content having this good traction of the whole project and the whole initiative. So I'm already almost at the end now. I wanted to conclude and let you still know something about our next steps. So again, we have established ELG by now, almost 4 years after the start of the project, as really a very central platform and maybe not the primary marketplace, but at least primary platform for LT technology in Europe. And for us, it's important that it's an initiative from the European LT community for the European LT community. And we see that ELG is really the right umbrella platform to tackle the fragmentation that I spoke of earlier. I'm sure that you will have later on the opportunity to convince yourself about that. So we see that the global market size in this area is enormous, not only by 2025, but also beyond. And we really want to make the European LT community key player here by increasing the visibility and reaching out to all the members of the landscape. By this establishing the ELG, we also want to contribute to the digital language equality. This relates to the other project that I don't have the time to talk about now, European Language Equality, which is, so in short, ELE, which is, as we call it, our sister project. Both projects are quickly closely related and work together quite or used to work together quite closely. So, and by giving this a home for all languages and all sorts of resources and language technologies, we believe that we can also contribute to increase the situation or better the situation for the lower resource languages. So ELG is a long-term initiative. Not only, so this will last also beyond the project, at the end of the project or the project runtime. We are about to establish a legal entity for sustainable, and we will operate and maintain the platform and also in the future. So this is clear. At the moment, we still haven't established the legal entity because there are not only legal things to sort out, but also, and I wanted to mention that in the next steps, there's also some things in flux here with regard to new language infrastructures. So the language data space is now in the first stage, and also other initiatives and infrastructures, and we want to make sure that ELG really fits in there correctly, and that's why we decided not to rush the establishment of the legal entity, but rather see how both all these infrastructures can really work well together. But still, so the legal entity will come this year, and this shape and form is under development. Moreover, we are still also in the process of validating the ELG products and more data repositories. So that's ELG is definitely something that will evolve over this year again. So before I close, I would quickly like to draw your attention on those two books. So the one on the left side, the European Language Grid book, is already out, so it's published and it's free access. So I really invite you to just Google it, European Language Grid in Springer, and you will find it and can download your own copy of the book. It's really a very good source of information about the project and the whole initiative. The book on the right-hand side is also very interesting, but it's not yet published, so be on the watch out for that. It's about to be published in later spring, I assume. Also, I invite you to follow our newsletter if you don't want to miss any news and more further developments about ELG and the whole European language technology landscape. So we have a very informative newsletter which you can subscribe to on our website, and also of course we would be happy if you followed us on the social media channels, LinkedIn and Twitter, where you will also make sure not to miss any news about ELG in the future. And with that, I would like to close my very brief overview and say thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very interesting further workshop. Many thanks.
Thank you, Katrin. That was very informative and interesting. I'm happy you were able to join us today for this introduction.
Yeah, thanks again for inviting me. That was a good opportunity. Great.
Yes, great. Thank you. So shall we move on then to my presentation on the project in general? Let me see. There it is. Okay, you should be now seeing my screen, right? All right, so let's move on then to talk about this microservices, bridging the gap between research and industry, which is our project now in its final stages. And as you can see, this is our partner list. Gradient, who is organizing this workshop. Then Linksoft is the coordinator, and in addition, we also have Reykjavik University and University of Tartu. And we are co-financed by Connecting Europe facility of the European Union, and the contents of this presentation are our responsibility and not EU's. So that should be said. Okay. So Katrin already kind of explained quite a bit of this background, and this is also where our project stems from. So there is strong R&D in European language technology, and there's lots of open source software available. And also the global players have limited interest, so tailored solutions are not often available. So it makes sense to actually provide this kind of a platform and have public projects to provide these tools for everybody to use. And here you can see, well, the labels are awfully small, but these are basically the technological factors of the kind of like how many technological tools are kind of like available in digital language equality scores. So here at the kind of leftmost, you have English, which is with a score over 70,000. And the next one is these are then the rest are the project languages that we have been now providing tools for. The next one is Spanish. Then surprisingly Finnish is the third one. Then Portuguese, Swedish, Estonian, and then it goes, and then Faroese is the smallest one here at the left. So there certainly is need to provide these tools. And basically why use open source tools in general? So there's lots and lots of good NLP research in Europe. And for established research groups, these tools are also reliable, and then you also can use them free of charge. Depending, of course, on license, but quite a few of these tools are on such licenses that they can be used for research and also for commercial use. But then of course, if it's a tool in some researchers repository, how do I find it? Is the researchers might not be interested in supporting it. Sometimes they have good documentation, sometimes they don't have good documentation. But even if the documentation is perfect, if it's just let's say Python code and some C code, is it worth the trouble to get it on my machine? How do I handle the dependencies? And if I get it running on my machine, will it work on somebody else's machine? So that's why aren't these? Hello. That's why the idea is nowadays to use these containers, or most often they are Docker. So basically, we package all of the software, all of the dependencies, the libraries that is needed, and the operating system in an isolated container. And then that can be downloaded and more easily run in different kinds of environments. And Docker is the most common. So we talk about lots of Dockers and Docker images and Dockerization as well. But basically there are many uses, both in scientific side and also in companies. So you can check previous year's machine translation challenge results or software development of students. And then in addition, it also makes it easy to create microservice architectures. So basically here, the puzzle pieces would be these NLP components in a Docker container. Then you plug in an API that sorts out the input and output in a standardized way. And then the clients can use this. And here in Kubernetes or some other platform, then you can just add these, or sometimes even like Katrin said, that is also possible in the ELG. This can be just a proxy that then calls a third-party cloud API. So adding new languages is easy. You can replace components, everything like that is also easy. So here we now come to the project details in a nutshell. So we started in beginning of March 2021, and the project ends at the end of February this year. And I already mentioned the participants or our consortium. And our original goal was to make 40 tools available as easily integratable microservices. Well, we made 60. So that's kind of good value for the money, so to say. And the idea in general is that these would be as easy to use as possible. They are tested in a sense that they do what they promise they do, and we covered quite a few languages as well. So Spanish, Basque, Catalan, and Galician, and Portuguese from the Iberian area, and of course Southern America as well, Icelandic and Faroes. Why is Danish there again? Sorry, Danish is not part of these languages, but it keeps popping up. So Norwegian, Swedish, Finnish, Northern Sami, Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Komi, and then some of the English wasn't part of the language list that we were supposed to, but there were tools that also existed in English, so we included those tools as well. And then there are some multilingual tools as well. And we brought these tools to European Language Grid for easy access and piloting. So basically make good tools available, and then also part of our task is also to advertise these tools and also to integrate, pilot integrate some of these tools in such a way that we can explain what kind of use cases we have found for them. So I will also be talking about those. And Katrin already mentioned the European Language Grid, but basically for a project like this, it's also been very beneficial for reaching larger audience, getting feedback, getting the tools in one place. The APIs are standardized. We've gotten quite a bit of help from the ELG team in debugging and making services available. They have developed Java a little bit to get some tools running. And then of course, the ELG network and the newsletter and collaboration in our workshops. So all of these have been very beneficial for us, and we thank the Europe ELG for that. So where are our tools now? So we have a project page at Linksoft web pages where we also list all of the project results. So basically all of the tools are there with a short description, the language, and then links to Docker Hub for the Docker image, and then for the ELG catalog. And At the European Language Grid, they are all on our ELG project page. So under the related LRTs and tool projects tab, you can find them. And then Katrin didn't mention it, but basically you can access all of these almost 2,000 running services at ELG just by registering. So you provide your name, email address, and password, and then you get a kind of verification link, and then all of these tools are there for you to try out. And then in addition, you can, if you need, you can download Docker images either from directly from the Docker Hub or from the ELG to use in your own environment. If you, for example, want to try with confidential data or something that you don't want to put in a cloud service, you can set it up quite easily on your own servers. So basically here, for example, this is just an example. So there's the overview tab of the project, and then the related LRTs, and then the whole list, and then clicking those links gets you to the tool description. And then similarly, once you've hit there's the overview, then there's kind of download and run, because this can also be used via the APIs, not just via the web UI, but then you can also just, put text in and get it running. So this is basically what Petra is going to show you later. So how to use these tools on the European Language Grid. And then in addition, the tools are also listed on the LREC Share, which is the e-translation platform for collecting translation and language technology related resources. So basically there we only have this is kind of the phone book part as well. So there are all the records of all the tools, and then there are links to GitHub or GitLab, depending on where the source code for the Docker is, the Docker Hub and the ELG. And finding these tools there requires that you use the faceted search with the microservice at your service from the sidebar, and then you get the tool list. And we have 60 tools in ELG and 62 records in ELG, because one of the tools that we Dockerized couldn't be put due to input and output requirements yet to the ELG. And then we have one additional proxy container to get one tool properly working. So lots and lots of tools. So we have and kind of topics. We have named entity recognition for Bokmål and Nynorsk, Swedish, Icelandic, Finnish, and Lithuanian. We have machine translation between English and Icelandic. We have sentiment analysis for Swedish and Spanish, general linguistics analysis tools for many languages, morphological analysis tools, language models, question answering systems, multilingual tools for language identification from text and speech, speech and text alignment tools, and also keyword and topic modeling. So it's quite a wide range of tools, mostly working on text, but with two kinds of tools also working on audio or audio and annotations. We will be kind of hosting these local workshops where we kind of dive deeper into these tools for different areas. So please join one or many of these workshops to then hear more about these tools. And then I don't know, I'm probably also a little over time. So basically one part of the project was also to this kind of integration dissemination. So adding tools to existing service platforms and try out, see if they are there. We also have a few blog posts coming on this experience, but I'll kind of briefly go through some use cases and we'll explain those later in the local workshops as well. So basically, we have this Heliot's text language identification tool originally developed at the University of Helsinki. So one thing that I should have probably highlighted earlier, that all of these are developed by researchers, and we just take and check that the licenses are good and put them on ELG with permission of the original authors. So we are just the packagers, so to say, and not the original authors. But basically, this language identification tool has proved to be very useful. It's running at Linksoft Language Services, our sister company's processes in the pre-processing of NMT. So basically, when you have text that you put in the NMT language model, sometimes there's so much of that data that sometimes there are parts that are in the wrong language and they get tagged in the wrong language. So what happened was that our was it Swedish to Finnish translation? I forget which one it was. It started outputting English as the output language, which of course isn't very practical. So we added a pre-processing step, not a reprocessing step, to verify the language of the text, and then this fixed the problem, and it's there running in the production. And then in another online library platform, Ellipse case, we are working on getting the metadata, checking the metadata and the book language, because sometimes the descriptions come from the publisher in a different language than the book is. And then if that kind of wrong information ends up in the platform, then, for example, screen readers might not work properly. And then Spanish question and answering tool, maybe Pedro can tell more about this one, is that you can basically filter badly formed questions with the Q&A engine. And that I understood that this is under testing. We also tried out Kaldi Align to align ebooks and audiobooks to seamlessly switch between text and audio at the same Ellipse online library platform. And therefore that we have integrated the tool, but we don't have the switching yet in progress. And similarly, there's the Turku University's named entity recognition for named entity recognition and keyword search. So we have compared Linksoft's own custom named entity recognition and this Turku NER to check improve the searchability within ebook or audiobook in that platform. So these all are kind of use cases for which we've already found use for these tools, and that there's more about that in the local workshops then. And we've also had previous workshops. We have a separate workshop webpage where you can register for our local workshops as well. And we also have past workshop videos, and also this workshop video will be coming there once we have processed it and gotten it accessible. So we first had one workshop on how to add an API to your tool and how to Dockerize it in 2021 in the summer. And the video is available there on the webpage. And then we had a second workshop that concentrated more on getting your tool on the ELG platform and how to make it ELG compatible and how to use them at the ELG. And it's also subtitled and available on the project webpage. And now I will give floor to Pedro for the demonstration part. Stop screen sharing.
Thank you, Tina. Okay, so my name is Pedro Alonso. I'm from Grading. and I'm going to show you a bit of how to use the tools that are hosted in the ELG. So this will be the points we are going to talk about, a bit about the ELG infrastructure. Then we will talk about the Python SDK. We will see how to browse tools in the catalog, and then how to call these tools and services from the Python SDK, and some complex functionalities that the ELG give to us, like pipelining tools. Also, we will talk about the corpuses hosted in the ELG and how to deploy the tools locally. So first of all, a bit about the infrastructure. This is a simplest diagram than the one that Tina showed before, but the idea is the same. The user will interact with an API that is inside the ELG Kubernetes cluster. And this server is the one that will interact with the tools deployed in each container. So for the user, it's transparent, and for every tool that want to use, the API is the same. So it gives a lot of facilities to use these tools to the user. Then for using the tools, each tool has a different kind of input. So there are different kind of requests of different types, such as text, structured text that is for texts that need a more complex structure, such as JSONs, for example. Then audio inputs, and also images. So about the Python SDK, there is a Python library developed by the ELG that allows to interact with the ELG in a very simple way. Here in this link, you have all the documentation about how to use it, and I will show you now a bit of this. So when we want to use a tool, or we have a necessity for our projects or researches, we may want to search for a service or a corpus that is suitable for us. So we will have to explore the catalog, and then once we find a tool that is useful, or we think it will be useful for us, we have to authenticate in the platform, in the service, and call the services to use them. So first, a bit about the ELG catalog. I will go into the website. Yes. Okay. So this is how it looks, the catalog. Here there are the tools that are available, and it has a text searcher, but also here there are a lot of filters. So for example, imagine we want to look for a tool in Catalan that is for a question answering, because we need a question answering service for our purposes. So we put these filters here, and we found that there is, in this case, just one tool for this purpose. So we will explore it. And if we go inside the tool information, we have all the information related to this tool. Some metadata information about the languages, their functionalities, some samples about how to use it, the providers of the tools, also the developers, if it's cited in any paper or publication, and also some information about how to download it. Here, a tryout interface to use it here in the website interface, and some code samples for Python, also to use a request with curl. And we can see also how is the structure of an input sample and of an output sample. Also, it's important to say that these tools may be ELD compatible services that are like the ones that are deployed and ready for use in the ELD infrastructure. And also you can find gas tools that are available for information in the ELD catalog. What does this mean? These tools will be listed here, but you cannot use it through the ELD because they are not deployed, but you can find it here and download it from their GitHub or from whenever they are hosted and use it by your own, let's say. Also, there is a functionality to use or browse the ELD catalog from the Python library. I recommend use the website interface way because I think it's more intuitive. But if someone wants to use it, it's just a few Python lines where you indicate the kind of results you want to look for, the functionality, in this case, for example, machine translation, and the languages, and you will it will return a list with information like this with the tools that have these requirements. Okay, so now once we want to use a specific tool, we have first of all to authenticate in the ELD SDK. As Tina said before, for using these tools, we have to have an ELD account. So first we have to log in, and once we are logged in the ELD, the first time you call a service, it will ask you to go inside a link where you have to authenticate with your user, and it will give you a token or a success code that you have to paste here. There are also another ways that are, because this token is just valid for a couple of hours. So if you want an offline access token that is useful forever, you have to, the first time that you use it, specify it, and then you can just use the parameter offline access in the scope and use it to not being obliged to paste this access code every time. Also, you can save these tokens or codes in a JSON file to facilitate it, and then you just, when you load your services in your Python code, you have to indicate the path of this file. Okay, now we are going to see examples for some specific tools that are the ones developed by us or other partners in the project. So first of all, we are going to start with Twilbert, that is a tool for Spanish for detection of hate speech. So we go here. We can see again the information of the tool. I'm not going to go really deep into this because, well, the same kind of information we saw for the previous tool, but we are going to see here the tryout interface. So it allows us to just select some of the samples and process the request, and it will show us the result soon in a few seconds. The first time we run a tool, probably it will last a bit more, because if the Docker image is not deployed, it has to run it, but then the next times will be faster. So let's hope it doesn't last a lot of time. But I will show you meanwhile the rest of the information here. Here is the Python code we will have to run it for use this. Okay, I changed the window and it. Okay, let's imagine this gave us the result, and I will show you here the same example. So the first way to through code to interact with the API is just with a curl request, where we have to indicate the token and the data we want, the text we want to put as an input, and the link of the endpoint. I'm sorry, here I just realized that this is for another example for a Basque tool, not for the Hilbert for Spanish, but well, it's just a text input that should be different, but it's the same. Okay, now going now for Python, these are just the few lines of code we need to call to these services. Just import the service class, give it the ID of the tool, and just give the text example, and it will return an output that in this case is a JSON with the class, in this case that this is a not hateful text with a high score. And if we put here another example that is a hateful speech, it will tell that is hateful with a score, a high score. So this is the example for a plain text input. But we have many other options, like using a file. We can put this text into a file, and instead of put as input the plain text, we put the path to the file, and as you can see, the output is the same as in the previous case. Now another option is using a request object. The ELD has some classes for request. In this case, it's text request, but it can be image request or audio request for the many input options. And you have to create the request object. Just in this case, it's simple. It's very simple because it's just the text. And instead of sending as parameter the text, you send the text request object. And again, the output result is the same. Okay, now I will show an example for another tool developed by Linksoft, I think, for sentiment analysis in Swedish. That you can see is quite the same. You have to load the service object with the ID of this tool, and you send in this case is the plain text type of request, and depending on the input, it will show you that it's a positive class or negative class. So what I want to show with this is that for the user, you don't need to care about the input differences that may have the different tools, because this gives you a similar input interface for all of them. And now another tool that is a bit more complex because it has more parameters. It's a question and answering tool for Catalan. But as you can see, the difference is not much. In this case, instead of only the text that is the content parameter of the request, you have some parameters more that is the question. So this tool, what does is giving a text and a question about the text, it gives you the answer to this question. So this talks about a TV program that's called Super 3. So the question is, when did this program start? And the answer is in 1991. And as you can see, is not much complex than in the other cases to make the request with Python. So this is a small summary of the different types of requests. Here, all the examples were about text requests, but imagine a tool for audio request. You just have to put the path of the file in the audio request object when you create it and send it to the service, or the same for images. Okay, and now I'm going to explain a more complex functionality that allows the ELD, that is pipelining some language technology tools. So imagine in this example, we have a text, an input text in German, and we want to make sentiment analysis about this, but you don't have a German sentiment analysis. So what we are going to do is first apply a tool for machine translation from German to English, and then perform English sentiment analysis about this result. So we just have to indicate the ID of both tools in correspondent order, and select some output functions called the parameter, that what makes is a transformation of the output of the first tool to the input of the second tool in case it is needed for select with part of the output structure of the first one will go through as input of the second one. So the result of these few lines of code of the pipeline will be these ones. The results of the first services is just the translation of the German text, and then the results of the second tool in the pipeline is the sentiment analysis results. So in this case, it says it's a positive text. So now we're going to finally talk about corpus. You can search corpus in the ELD website catalog in the same way as you search for language technology tools, using in the filters the option for corpuses. And you can also search for corpuses from the catalog, like indicating the resource type corpus. And once you have the ID of the corpus you want to explore or download, you just have to indicate the download command in Python, the folder or directory where you want to download it, and the name you will give to it. So it's as simple as this. And now we are going to talk about how to deploy the tools locally. We may want to have these tools instead of call the API and use it in the cloud. We may want to have it locally for many reasons, for example, confidentiality of our data or whatever. So this the ELD gives us this command where you just need to indicate the ID of the tool you want to deploy locally, and you will a Docker Compose file will be created that allows you just to deploy in this Docker Compose to have this architecture or this infrastructure deployed locally. Is the same as it's deployed in the ELD cluster, but in our computer. And so the tool you want to use will be deployed in its container, and there will be deployed the service execution server that goes in the middle, that allows you to interact with it with the ELD API. So for you, it's the same, that you can use the Python library in the same way, because it implements the API, so it facilitates the things for the user. So this is all about how to use the ELD tools. So we have learned about a bit about the different ways of calling the services, the different kind of services or input types the ELG has, also about how make pipelining of tools and how to deploy them locally. So I give the word to the next speaker.
I think it's Tina.
Yes, I'm here, ready to.
Okay.
Ready to. Can you now see my screen again?
Yes.
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 Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you, Pedro, for a kind of in-depth introduction to all different kinds of ways to access these tools. It's very good that we can now also. It's not only the website, but all these other API accesses and also that the graphical user interface is available to be downloaded for a local one as well. So there's that. But okay, so what are we still what have we still there? So we will have local workshops in the coming weeks that focus more on the tools on that language area with more examples and demonstrations on how to use those tools. And at least in the Finland and Scandinavia one that I'm hosting, I'm also hoping that there will be discussion on this. So if you happen to have your own use cases, I think everybody is also happy to discuss those. So you don't just necessarily need to listen us talking. So they are to be more interactive in that sense. And the registration is open. And at the project workshop website, all of these workshops have sign-up registration links. And I think the Finland one is going to be in English. Iberian one is going to be in the language that everybody of the participants of the workshop will understand. Estonian was probably going to be in Estonian, and Icelandic is either in English or Icelandic also, depending on the participants. And we weren't quite as efficient as we thought when planning the agenda, so we are running a little bit out of time. But we are happy to answer any questions you might have at the moment. We'll also be sending a questionnaire, so please answer. And then, because we need to also report on the impact of the project, I would appreciate that if you happen to use these tools or have question of these tools, or if you integrate any of these tools or try them out in a process, please send me an email. We obviously will get some anonymous statistics of how many times a tool has been run from the ELG, or how many times it has been viewed. But if we get any of this further information from you, we would be very happy to know. And if you provide this information, we'll report it anonymously to the funder when we do our final report, so that they can also better understand the impact of the project. If you want your name mentioned in the report, we can do that, but we will not do that unless you explicitly say you want it mentioned. And now, would there be any questions? I think Carmen can handle the system in such a way that the questions can be asked either in the chat or.
Yes, if you want to, if you have any question, you can write it in the chat, or I can activate your audio. You can raise your hand.
If there are no questions, I actually have a question to Pedro. So how once a tool was in the ELG, how long did it take for you to try it out via the API? Of course, you might be a little more kind of, practical than some, but how fast is it to start using a new tool via the API?
Well, it's quite simple. As you saw in my presentation, you have to use a few lines of code. So first you have to get familiarized and handle a bit the input, the structure, the tool needs. But in many cases, like in some of my examples, the input is just a text. So you don't have to make a big effort to construct this input request. And then depending on the output structure, again, you have to understand how it is and to get the information that is useful for you in this structure. But in many of the tools, it's not quite complex. So if you want to integrate this in your application, for example, it may take you, depends from minutes to few hours, maybe.
Okay, thank you. So let's hope that many people can now try this out and find new ways. And then I don't know if you noticed in the chat, but Katrin had to leave after her presentation, but she wanted you to know that if there are ELG specific questions, those can be directed to her email address. I'm sorry, I got a bit of a dry cough, or then there's also a kind of web form at the ELG webpage where the questions can be sent. Sorry. Okay, are there any further, well, any questions? This is of course a difficult moment maybe to ask your questions, but my email address is there. Carmen had her email address in the invitations, so please send us feedback or via the web page and the questionnaire that comes. And beyond that, I think we are ready. Thank you for everyone for joining. It's been a pleasure to present our project to you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, there's one more comment in chat. Oh, that was just Jack. Thank you. Okay, yes. Thank you. Just wanted not to kind of miss any comments. All right. I had a thank you slide.